Live. Thank you for sticking with us. We finally have the video working for all participants as well. We have Nana YaaSerwaah Akuoku, who
hello.
is the highlight of this webinar for Ways of Create, because your project sort of it checks all the boxes that we had in mind for innovation, for style, and for sustainability as well, because all the materials that you used are not new materials, right? They're materials that you repurposed to build. Wait for a robot that speaks. A robot that speaks. Before I steal any of your thunder, please introduce yourself. Let us know who you are and what your background is and what your project is about.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, it happened at the last minute, but I'm just so happy that it came together. My name is Nana YaaSerwaah, and I am a visual artist and fashion designer. My background is actually in fashion, but I was one of those people that went to school for fashion, and then when I learned about the business side, I was like, I think I kind of really like the art side a little bit more. So like after doing a few internships in like the corporate world, I'm sure, when you get into the corporate world, it's a lot different from what you're expecting the fashion world to be. So I kind of ultimately made my way over to the art world, and I've been kind of doing that ever since. But I definitely still have a passion for, fashion as well. And I guess like right now I'm figuring out how to blend both of those career-wise. I've always done it like in my practice, but now, I want to kind of put the art and the fashion together in business.
Okay, so you've been practicing, so for the past couple of years, you've been practicing more as an artist, is what you're saying, or as a fashion?
Well, I guess it depends on who you ask, because if you ask someone who's in fashion, they might say, oh, you're not in fashion, like you're doing some type of art or something like that. But if you ask someone in art, they would say that's fashion. So I guess it really depends on like who you ask. But I'm kind of smack dab in the middle of a few different worlds, which is totally fine for me. I feel like it just makes me all that more creative anyway. So.
Exactly. I mean, I'm always a fan of different disciplines coming together, because that's where you find the spark of innovation.
Definitely.
That creates something that people are. That causes people.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Exactly, that causes people to stop and to think about this and say, well, we haven't seen this before. So
it's also a way to challenge yourself, right? So I mean, a part of what I like about meshing different genres is the learning curve that comes along with like having to learn a new trade or just a new field, and figure out how to implement that into what I do, which is fashion and art.
Right. So before we get to WASSAIC and the other projects that you've been into, please tell us about your project. We want to know. So for us, for Fashion Revolution, the topics we've been touching on essentially is the future of fashion, but a future of fashion that is sustainable, that is ethical, but is also forward thinking. Amazing presentations. I don't know if you're able to join us on the 22nd to see Piero's work. And
yes, I was there. Right. I was asking a lot of questions, actually. Oh, I think I have like 90% of the questions.
So yeah, see Piero's work, and Isatu was supposed to join us as well today, but she had an emergency, and so she couldn't make it. Hopefully, we want to sort of turn this into a podcast of some sort, so that we can have more innovative projects like this on and show to the audience what's happening. So please tell us about tell us your project. We want to know the background, the history of it. I want to hear more about it before you show us.
Of course, no, that's the exciting part for me, because like it's one thing to see something and just say, oh, okay, that's like cool, you use some interesting materials, but like to really understand my like thought process is what I really love to share. So for this past December to remember / year of return, I visited Ghana for the first time, but for me, it was definitely not for any of those particular reasons. It was more to meet my family for the very first time. So my mom is American, my father's African. Well, my mom's African American. My father, he was Ghanaian. He passed away when I was 2, but he was born and raised in Ghana. So I have a lot of family there. And I went to go meet them, and I met my grandmother for the first time. And that experience was very unique because she's the only living grandparent that I have. So it was the first time that I was actually like in a room with someone that was essentially like the root of everyone else in the room. And like when I looked around at my other family, like my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, it was just like a surreal feeling for me, because we all looked alike, but then we all like looked like her. And like she had the most prominent features, and then we were all like, you know, iterations of what she was. And it was a really, really powerful moment for me. And it made me just have this unconditional love and like appreciation for her when I first met her, because it was just like, I don't know, it was kind of just like looking at this being who, if she felt like God to me at that moment, to be honest with you. I know that might be a little dramatic, but like that's how it felt to me. So it made me think of Charles Darwin and like all of the work he did with, you know, at DNA and looking at our physical characteristics and how they're passed down from generation to generation. And in that work, he used rabbits to get an idea of what their ears would look like, if some of the ears would be floppy or if they were standing up. And it was just like a series of experiments that he did, just testing how our characteristics are passed down and shared between our mother and our father through generations. And also that work today is kind of being duplicated, but now it's being done with algorithms, right? So, you know, we're putting codes in computer systems and like letting it run and seeing how those physical characteristics kind of morph. So the work is called, I don't know when I should show you. But wait, let me get it. Let me do a little prep work for a second. I'm holding the hands. Okay. Yeah. So the first thing I thought obviously was rabbits, but then I was thinking of like these three-dimensional shapes, and I really wanted something that captured her essence. So this work is kind of a creative just depiction of both of those theories combined in one. Yeah, let me get it right for you. Let me see if I can flip this over. I was really like, when I went to Ghana, like right before I went to Ghana, I had been thinking a lot about like the future and like the future of fashion specifically. And that kind of bothered me, because I really wanted to be like, I wanted to kind of get back to like the more traditional way of design and like have my mind in that, you know, that like, you know, I don't know, I guess more of an original way that people made, you know, fashion, but I couldn't help it. Like I just kept thinking about the future. But then I came to the conclusion that it was okay to like merge those things, because if I'm saying that's what I do anyway, why not do it with concepts and like time periods, right? So this here is like depicting, you know, it's kind of representing that work that Charles Darwin did with the rabbits here on the top. Right. And if you look here, so this part right here is like my grandma's face, right? With all of these different features. It's very, very abstract, but they all are like different abstract faces if you really look. So this is like eyes, and like this is her nose. Yeah. You see? And if you look at the shapes, they're also featuring these like really cool geometric shapes that are very reminiscent of the shapes that you get from the algorithms today. And I really wanted to focus on that iridescence, because again, that iridescence reminds me of, you know, the future and like what we'll be able to experience when we start using, you know, Oculuses and like being in like VR. We'll be so used to it by that time. Right. But I also wanted to combine some of the traditional like hair braiding techniques. I actually use a lot of braiding in my work period, so I always have some of that. But I wanted to kind of fuse, you know, the new and the old, and kind of also going in on like on the side, on the plates that like branch off. So all of this is made from acrylic. These are all like repurposed acrylic plates, and I really didn't purchase anything new. I just worked with found items around my apartment. The only thing I did purchase was the textiles, because I needed it to be like the exact color. But I actually did have some textile, like the lace. I actually had it. Okay. And I kind of built out from that. But like all of this stuff here, these are, this comes from a wind chime. And these are all like braids here. And this was actually, I mean, I usually don't like to tell like what things are, but I'm going to do that because we're specifically focusing right now on sustainability and repurposing. So these are actually gift boxes. These are gift boxes. So I took a gift box and then I just cut them up into these really like interesting shapes that, you know, I just thought were cool. And it was very just intuitive. I don't measure a lot of times when I'm working. I really like to just work, you know, from the feeling of things. And I like to kind of use different materials and just do whatever I can do to just make things appear, you know, different. So I'm going to get into that feature now because you can probably hear it. But I want to just say that the faces here, so they all like branch off from this face. And that was very, very intentional. So in my mind, this is my grandma. That's kind of why she's like the center of the work. And then maybe these are my aunts. And then maybe, you know, around the back.
Yes, so it's essentially like a family tree.
It's a family tree. Exactly. It's a family tree. Oh, I almost forgot to mention this. So the work is actually also a wall sculpture. So this piece right here is totally detachable. If you see this here, it like opens up here on the side. It just has like a little clip here.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I'm not going to do it now, but it opens up here on the side. And then you can actually just have it like hanging on your wall as a sculpture. Wow. And that was to me, that was very, very intentional because since WASSAIC was my first art residency, I wanted to embrace that, you know, idea of creating art. And you know what, actually, now that I think about it, the straps are from a handbag that I actually bought in the secondhand market in Ghana.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I love the bag. I love the bag so much. But I was kind of fighting with it. I was like, I love this bag. But I was like, this bag would be the perfect handles for this work. So I repurposed it. And I'm glad that I did it because it just worked out. Perfect. Yeah. And it's all cutlery. These are forks.
Oh, that's cutlery?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. There's a lot of little gems here and there. There's like mirrors, a little tiny mirror. Can you see that? And obviously, this is the sensor. So I don't know if you can hear it. Let me see if I can get closer because I want you to hear it. So this is a prayer that my grandmother said to me while I was, before I got on the plane to come back to New York. Can you hear it? Oh, you know what? I just realized the reason why you can't hear it is because I have headphones Can you hear it now?
Yeah, I had a bit of it. So it was in tree, right?
Yes, it's in tree. But I just realized when I was asking if you could hear it, and I was putting the phone to it, I have headphones on, so the mic is right here. The mic is all the way up here.
So the audio is essentially driven by a sensor.
Yes. So it activates by a sensor. I'll actually, so there's a computer in here. I'm gonna like cut it off now. So it runs on a battery, a 9-volt battery here. I took the battery out, but oh, you know what? I just realized it's like I'm finding new stuff to talk about here. So this is a plastic bottle that's holding it, and I wanted to do this because obviously when I first got to Ghana, I realized that there was, a huge issue with plastic bottle waste.
Right.
So I really wanted to be intentional about repurposing plastic bottles. And honestly, I was so inspired by the idea of repurposing plastic bottles that it's definitely going to be something that that I do more in my work, for sure. So yeah, let me just get this off again. So,
yeah, I mean, essentially, Naya, I'm just speechless right now. Yeah, I am, because this is stuff that that's sorely needed, because it helps us to think of what the possibilities are in the future.
Yeah.
It inspires us, but it also shows us, what sort of things could potentially be created as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. It's not necessarily about, for me, it depends on what I'm working on, but sometimes I like to just experiment, and it's not necessarily about the wearability. Sometimes it's just to like stretch the mind to see how things could be applied. So maybe this is not, something that the everyday woman could wear right now, but maybe there is a purpose for having some type of audio in your garment, maybe for people who are more senior or who have a medical condition, or maybe they can't speak. So there's definitely a great benefit of seeing how to implement a lot of the stretch of capability that computers give us. If we can implement that into, wearables, I mean, why would we not want to do that? I mean, we do it now with like watches. A smartwatch is pretty much the same thing, but we just haven't really gotten to that point where we're, doing it on a large scale for other type of wearables.
Wonderful, wonderful. So can you step back a bit so that we can have a proper scale of the whole piece?
Yes. Can you, let me see if I can get more light actually. And I also use like all of the fabric. So I didn't really know exactly what shape I was gonna do. What I did was just, I cut the main shape I wanted, and then, so it has like an underskirt in here as well. And I'm still doing a little bit of sewing on it, to be honest with you. I have to sew the horse here at the bottom. Okay. But I use all of the fabric. So I guess that's another form of sustainability that's put into this work as well. But let me turn it around. Can you see?
That's amazing. That's amazing, Anaya. So are there other projects that you've worked on that you can give us a link to and we can share with?
Sure. Definitely. I mean, just let me know like what how do you want me to get that to you?
Okay.
Or do you need me to like give it to you now? Or just let me know.
Okay. That'll be great. The other thing we want to know is so you were talking about your residency at WASSAIC and what that's about. Can you elaborate a little bit more on it?
Yeah, and I'll actually.
You also have a teaching workshop, like you have a training workshop that you put together.
Yes, for sure. So it was at the WASSAIC Project, which is a live-in art residency in upstate WASSAIC, New York. I taught a workshop on creativity mining. And I was actually the teaching fellow, so I was able to attend that program at no cost, thank God. And in exchange for that, I was asked to teach something that would be useful for the community. So, just going around, I was just actually, when I was in Ghana, I was asking people like, I showed them my work and I said, what would you want to know? Like, what would you want me to teach you if I could teach you anything? And I would say about 8 out of 10 people said that they want me to show them how to be more creative. And at first I was kind of like, how do you somebody be creative? But then I actually went through it in my mind, like some of the things that I think about and some of the techniques that I might like apply to designing that are kind of intuitive at this point, but they still have like a process to that, right? So I just kind of went and like wrote some of that stuff down, and like within about 3 days, I had a whole curriculum, and I sat there and I put it together, and I taught creativity mining to that community there, and it was fun.
Right. That's something that we certainly want to look into, because in your synopsis on your website, I saw that it's basically how to look at different objects or everyday items around us and how to rethink these items.
Reimagine them. And it's actually a little bit of what you said earlier with like fusing. And I had about, so there's like different levels, different steps, different approaches to get different forms of creativity in your work. So one of the things that you said earlier with like meshing different things, that's been something that has, I think it's just something that I'm like naturally interested, but it actually works out that it allows you to be very, very creative.
Yeah, and I think there's a really important discussion in talking about sustainability and circular fashion, circular design in total, because then it helps you to rethink whatever garments or whatever items that you're using, to think of other possibilities or other ways in which you could repurpose those items or you could upcycle those items, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things we were talking about with Blisco, for instance, was essentially upcycling a garment into an accessory another accessory could be upcycled into a pillowcase. But even those things are still in the fashion accessory space, right? We're thinking more of, with what you're doing, it would be more interesting if, for instance, these things could be repurposed into other items that are a little more remote from fashion, but but then
give me what are you thinking? I feel like you got some wheels turning in there.
So for instance, you're using a sensor, right? You're using a
oh, okay, I see what you mean. Yeah,
making clothes, right? And so that's essentially become a resource or a raw material that you're using to make a fashion garment or an art piece. Imagine that the reverse. Imagine the reverse of a fabric or a fabric piece could be used in some other project or in some other shape, right? So for instance, an example is how PET bottles are being woven to make car seats, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what's another one that, I mean, it's the same concept, and I think people do it, but maybe they don't even realize that they're doing it. But when you apply that same method to business modeling, is when you really start to come up with something that, you know, can potentially change the world. You know, if you, in most of the businesses now that are like thriving in this current climate are something, you know, that kind of mesh two different worlds together. I mean, I guess the example that most people use because it's the most prominent is like a Netflix, you know, that's like a combination of Blockbuster and YouTube, you know, and if you can figure out a way to just mesh what we're used to, because you have to have a way for people to feel like they can adopt it. It has to have at least a small bit of similarity to something that they're, you know, that they use every day. But, you know, if it has a little twist to it, they'll say, you know, wow, this is a little bit different, but I'm used to doing this. You know, I'm used to going to Blockbuster, but, you know, I'm not, you know, it's not totally different for me to rent movies, but now I can do it like at home, and like I don't have to like actually go and get anything, and it's a subscription service. I mean, but it's still the same, you're still getting the same benefits, but even better. So, you know, I think that's actually going to be more prominent actually going forward now anyway, because everybody is, I mean, even right now with COVID, like we're being forced to live in the digital age. So if you weren't comfortable with it before, now you have to figure out how to mold your business to be in the digital space. So can you imagine what kind of ideas are going to come out after this? Like, I'm kind of excited.
I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see. I mean, COVID has changed the landscape forever, and there's setting a lot of interest coming out as a result. So before we wrap up this, I wanted to know, do you have other projects coming up? Are you going to do anything in Ghana? Do you plan on doing anything? I realized that you were here at Afrochella.
Yeah, I did. I did an activation at Afrochella. It was more of a creative kind of presentation.
Okay. Yeah, that's wonderful. Would you be open to, for instance, teaching one of your workshops here if we put together a session? Because I think this.
Oh my God, yeah, like teaching in Ghana, like that's like meaningful on like a whole nother level. I mean, I feel like now that you know, I've had even with like getting into the art world, like I had 2 women specifically that really inspired me and kind of guided me and like helped me to figure out how to even maneuver. I mean, like before that, I knew that I was creative, but I didn't know about art residency. I didn't know about art residency. So I was creating like sculptures that like hang and like you could wear them and all this stuff, but they were just like in the apartment and like nobody really seen them besides Instagram, but I didn't even really like post it on Instagram. So if it wasn't for, you know, maybe I would have found out about residencies later on, but like, you know, I had this random stranger have a conversation with me that pretty much within 6 months I was doing, you know, a program and teaching a class that has essentially allowed me to now find out this week that I just got my 2nd residency, you know? So like, if I could offer that to someone else, especially someone else that is like, you know, from the land that my late father is from, like, that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Like, you know, using your talent, your passion to essentially better other people in a way that's still like fun and doesn't even feel like work to you.
Exactly.
I think my grandmother literally just said amen. I swear to God. I swear she just said that. I don't know if that's a word in tree, but I could have swear she just said that. I'm not making it up.
I'm sure she did. I'm sure she did.
She did. I'm not even. This is not even a joke. Like literally, she just said "Amen, Amen." I'm like, what?
Amazing. So we have a couple of people on the stream right now. I want to check if we have any questions. Okay, so Karen, no, we don't have any questions. But
okay, because I talk too much.
No, but I think it's pretty clear what we're doing. Keith says excellent creativity.
So thank you so much, Pete.
And we'll share this as well. We need as many people to see this and to just basically broaden your perspective on what fashion can be and what
fashion is anything you want it to be.
Exactly. And you know, when you were showing this, I was just thinking that's Wakanda right there, right? That could be the pathway.
It's Wakanda meets Harlem meets like 2050.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Okay, bye-bye. How do I sign out?